Welcome to this mini webinar about the entering year 2021 admissions process timeline overview. My name is Dr. Layla Harrison. I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Admissions and Student Affairs at Washington State University, also known as Floyd College of Medicine. To start this webinar, I want to just show you the timeline for the entering year 2021 admissions cycle. As you know, if you're an applicant in this cycle or have previously applied, you know that it's a long process. Applications can open for AMCAS in early May of 2020. You can begin submitting those applications at the end of May. And then on July 10th, our first set of applications were transmitted to us from AMCAS. And so that's when we began our review process. Verification for secondary requirements began at that point as well. Our interview season will be between September through February this cycle. October 15th is our AMCAS deadline. Our regular season in terms of rolling offers can be made between October 15th of 2020 through March 15th of 2020. Then in the middle of March, we form our wait list. Our waitlist period in terms of offers goes between March and August when we matriculate our class. So there are a couple of other important dates here that we would cover with you if you were interviewing with us, but I just wanted to provide this overview of the lengthy interview process or admissions process so that you understand that it is quite a bit of time from the point that you may have applied to a medical school to when decisions are made. In our process, besides the deadlines previously covered that are also on this one, there are several places in which you will likely be waiting to hear from us and may not hear from us for some time. The first part of that process could be when you are waiting for a secondary application. Secondary applications for us we have very straightforward requirements, and we have another mini webinar covering those, and I highly recommend watching that. It's also spelled out on our website. If you're waiting for a secondary, I would review that to see if you have met all of our requirements, or perhaps you're missing a piece of data we require that is coming later on in the admissions process. Regardless, whenever we receive or notes in your application materials that you've met all of the secondary requirements, our system automatically will send you one of those secondary applications. After that, when you submit your secondary application, your file then goes into a screening process to make recommendations for interview. Now, this process can be ongoing. It isn't just that one time or there's two individual people that will screen your application, but decisions for inviting you in for an interview can occur even months later after your application was reviewed by these two people. So this is where one of those waiting times can come in, where you're waiting to hear back. And it's possible you may not be selected to interview, and so you would find that out later on. The other time period in which waiting typically occurs is after you've interviewed, and you're waiting to hear about whether or not you're going to be made an offer of acceptance. Now, there again, it's possible that you will never receive an offer of an acceptance in that cycle, and those decisions will come out later on. So if you've interviewed, let's say September 14th is our first interview day this year, it is possible that you don't hear anything in the regular rolling offer period between October and March. Maybe then you hear about the wait list. And then you could be on the wait list until the class matriculates and never come off the wait list. So those are time periods in our process in which you could experience a lot of waiting time without hearing from us. And we know that this waiting to hear creates a lot of anxiety. We hear often from applicants that they want to know what their status is, they want to know when they're going to hear something. And so this is why we decided to put this webinar together, to help you understand that we know that there are going to be points of time in our process where you will be waiting. And so it's important to think about what you have control over in an admissions process, what you can influence, and what you have no control over. So I'm going to give you some examples of these in this webinar. The first is what you can control. You can control submitting a well-completed application. You can ensure that you're meeting secondary requirements before paying the AMCAS fees. You can submit your secondary applications in a timely manner. You can write unique essays for the secondary application. So those are like submitting or completing a well completed application. You can control how you interface with medical schools. Professionalism is incredibly important in making our decisions. We need to enroll professional applicants to medical school because this is a highly ethical career that requires integrity and professionalism. So you can control whether you engage with us in a professional manner, whether that's through email, phone, or this season, Zoom. And we would highly encourage you to review our webinar on professionalism as well. You can control how you communicate and the information you provide to us. Again, if you're invited in for an interview, doing the best you can in the interview, being yourself. You can control how quickly you respond to invites for interview. If we reach out to you with questions or needing more information, all of those things you can control providing those in a timely manner. And then finally, you can control thoroughly reviewing our website and our webinars to inform yourself about our process and answer your questions. What you influence. You influence, providing us an idea of who you are. So the information that you share about yourself and the experiences you engage with gives us some indication of your character traits and helps us understand or better determine whether or not you align with our mission. And we're a very mission-driven medical school, so I would highly encourage that. You can also influence, the professional communication and prompt responses, as I talked about previously in controlling, because what that tells us is that you're somebody who's invested in our process, you're invested in your own future, and we hope that that is going to translate into the kind of medical student you would be. So that's something you can influence. Now, what you don't control, and this is where a lot of the anxiety comes in for applicants to medical school. You don't control the waiting time. The secondary, as I mentioned, it will be released as soon as you meet all of those requirements. But it's a fluid process in terms of when we might invite you in for an interview, if we do. It could be months after you submitted your secondary application. You also don't control admissions committee decisions. Admissions committee are meant to make their decisions without any outside influence. And this ensures a fair and equitable process. We follow our process and make decisions according to that process. And it's important to know that the accreditation process requires this. They require that we follow a process. They will require that there is no outside influence on our decisions. So you might think you can influence our decisions by emailing us after an interview day with a letter of intent saying that if we accept you, you promise to come to our medical school. Those kinds of correspondence with us, while not unprofessional, it has no influence on our process. We do not review those, we don't consider them, because we're making our decisions fair and equitably across all applicants according to our process. You also don't control the timing of interview invites or the offer of acceptance, as I kind of have mentioned previously. Your application is being considered for an interview until we finish or fill all of our interview spots. And that typically is going to occur in late January, even into February. So it could be up until that point that you don't hear from us about an interview. Or you could be somebody that we invite in those later months to interview, even if you submitted your application or your secondary application, in July or August. You also don't control that once you interview and are assessed by the AC admissions committee, you don't control when we make offers. Our process and our rank list determines our offers, as I mentioned, and you have no control over that. We actually also don't share with you where you are on the rank list. And so we do understand that does bring a lot of anxiety to applicants. But this is why we're trying to provide this webinar, so that you have a better understanding that we acknowledge that and to focus on the things that you do have control over. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to my team. This is our main admissions inbox, and we look forward to hopefully meeting you this cycle.